Hi everyone, I'm Josh Gitalis, clinical nutritionist, and I've had the opportunity to interview dentists, naturopaths, medical doctors, children, advocates, nutritionists, but I've never had the opportunity to interview my wife. Here we have today Meghan Telpner, nutritionista and recent published author
of UnDiet.
Which we have here today.
Yes.
So, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me in our kitchen.
Yeah, and do you have any idea why I chose this particular spot for our interview?
Well, we love our asparagus painting that your mom did, but
Yes.
I also know what's in the opener of chapter 10. That's us having our cup of tea, wearing the same ensemble. It's
In this
almost
exact
exactly
spot,
1 year
yeah.
later, too, that we shot it.
Incredible.
I've got better bling on my hand this time around.
A lot's happened since
A
then.
lot. We got married.
Right. So, let's get right into it.
Sure.
I found a lot of great pearls in your book, and I explain these things to clients all the time, and one of the greatest things that I came across was your explanation of the calorie. When you start actually describing what the principles of UnDiet are, you get into what a calorie is.
Yes.
Can you please elaborate on that? I think it'd be very valuable.
Absolutely. So one of the key things in UnDiet is this idea of questioning the paradigms. And the first couple chapters is actually devoted to questioning these ideas that we've come to accept in conventional nutritional wisdom. You know, it's a lot of like, well, we need to have this much from this food group, that kind of thing. And one of the things is the calorie. So there's a section called Calories Don't Count. And the reason calories don't count is because it's a measure of fuel source from a food that doesn't necessarily apply to human metabolism. So I tell this story in the book about my grandma and how I once made her this granola, and I passed it to her and she looked and she's like, "What is that? 1,000 calories?" And I said to her, "Well, what is a calorie?" And she said, "It's the fat you get from eating too much carbs." And at the time I laughed, being like, "Oh, funny Grandma Fritzy." Right. But the thing is, most people really don't understand what a calorie is. They think calories make them fat. So the way I describe a calorie and what a calorie is it's a fuel. So if we use food as a fuel, and you can use petroleum, you can use petrol, like gasoline as a fuel as well. Right. But in the sense of food, and what we're talking about, we use food as the fuel. You burn the food in a machine called the bomb calorimeter. So you light this food.
So they're comparing a machine.
Exactly.
To a human body.
That's the thing. So what they're doing, and what most people don't realize, is they burn this food, and the heat generated from the burning of this food goes up a pipe and down into essentially a water source. And a calorie count is how many degrees that water source gets heated. So if you think about it, we know that oil, for example, is long burning. You get oil candles, oil tea lights to burn for 8 hours. So that's why fat, for example, and oil would have more calories than a carbohydrate, where when you burn paper or fiber, it can burn very quickly.
Right.
So you translate that into like what goes on in your stomach, and I don't have a bomb calorimeter in my belly.
I sure hope not.
So this whole notion of the calorie is the count of whether something's healthy or not. Something with 200 calories, they're not all created equal, and that doesn't automatically make it a good snack. Because you can have... Right. Are you going to show something?
Well, on one of your pages, you have examples of different snacks that are all 200 calories.
Yeah.
You've got broccoli, a little plate of potato chips, a little thing of M&Ms. Are those M&Ms?
They're candies. We don't need to name names.
A plate of avocado, 3 eggs, and 3 pieces of toast.
Right. So, and the broccoli is like more broccoli than you'd ever eat. If you think about that, so you're hungry, and a lot of people go for that 200 calorie snack. So you get like little micro bags of potato chips.
Right.
So you can have like 8 potato chips, or you can have, a whole bowl of chickpeas and 3 boiled eggs. And it just doesn't equate, because when you get the quality of the food, and you're looking for this nutrient density, so the more power for every bite, the more nutrition for every calorie, suddenly that calorie count becomes completely irrelevant. And that's a really important thing, that when you start going through the book, and I don't give calorie counts for the dishes I create, because it really is an irrelevant count. But what we don't take into account when we look at a calorie count is our own calorie burning, which is affected by so many factors, and I go through in detail. But like the sex, not how much you have, but whether you're male or female.
Right.
Female.
Right.
The activity you do, the types of foods you eat, you burn more calories actually eating whole unprocessed foods. And then even the weather, your stress level, all of that is going to affect. So then you want to get away from this idea of the calorie as the be all and end all, and what you're looking for is nutrient density in your food. Basically, the most nutrients per every bite of calorie that you have.
Right. You mentioned something about whole foods.
Yeah.
Right? And how you can maybe burn different amounts of calorie depending on if it's a whole food or not. And there's an analogy I really like that you used of a factory.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, well, I actually referenced a study that interestingly was done by a second cousin of mine I've never met. I interviewed her once. I did a podcast with her. But this idea that she did a study, it was her PhD thesis, where she actually looked at the calorie burning of, and it wasn't even, 100% whole unprocessed food, but she looked at, white bread and cheese slices compared with the whole grain bread and a less processed cheese, and found that in the digestion of whole foods, the body accelerated the calorie counting, the calorie burning.
Wow.
And you can translate that to look at, the factory that's turning our breads into white bread and our, natural milk or dairy products into this like plastic stuff. The fuel, the calorie burning is happening by the factory. They're outsourcing that energy to do the processing. Whereas when we eat whole foods, our body is the factory.
Right.
Burning that fuel source to process the nutrients.
It's working to get the goods out of the food.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, cool. So what I also found really cool about the book, when I got to it, I didn't even expect it to be there, to tell you the truth, is when I got to the chapter, There Is No Way.
Yes.
So I'm just going to turn to that quickly. There is no way. And the reason why I was somewhat surprised that it was there was because I've read lots of books on diet and nutrition and health, and there's never been a chapter on this.
I break the rules.
In a diet book.
I break the rules, homie G.
So, that's what I like about you. So tell me why it's in there and how it ended up in a diet book or an UnDiet book.
Thank you. That's the whole thing. It's not a diet book. It's a full lifestyle thing. And the reason there is no way in there is because when I was doing all my research, and we're very conscious about the garbage we make in our house, and we never throw out food, and because I know you'll eat it rotten even before you'll throw it out.
Well.
But it's this idea that like we think our diets and what we eat really just affects us, and it's like, oh, but it's expensive and it's more inconvenient, all this, but it's more inconvenient for the entire planet to be throwing out food. And when I started doing this research, I found a really interesting, very simple fact that the top 3 waste-making things in, modernized society, completely unavoidable, is paper, plastic, and food waste. Which is kind of shocking.
Right.
And so what that chapter is about, I talk about the planet, and I give some really crazy statistics about how like there's, 16 million pounds of garbage made, food waste, just in Toronto every month.
I can't even fathom, that amount and how many people that would feed.
Right. But then I started, so what the chapter's about is batch cooking. So we talk about the planet and how our eating habits affect the planet and how our consumption of plastic and packaged goods are affecting our health with like BPA and creating boys with boobs and that kind of stuff and undescended testicles and women getting hormone related cancers and all that kind of, men and women. But then I was like, it has to go a step further. So we need to stop drinking out of plastic. We need to stop using takeaway containers and using disposables for everything. But then if we start to batch cook and we buy our foods in bulk from the food store, make, giant jars of soups and stews and prepare a lot, you end up throwing out a lot less. And the entire book is about planning and doing all that. Where in chapter 5, I talk about meal prep and how to plan and execute, to optimize your time in the kitchen, how to grocery shop, follow your list. Then you get to chapter 7, There Is No Way, and it's really about using all that planning to batch cook and bulk prep, so that you don't throw anything out at the end of the week. You're saving money, you're saving our sweet little planet, you're saving your health, and you're also saving a ton of time because then you get to pull your ready-made food that you've already batch prepped.
Right.
Perfect.
And I just also want to point out too, you mentioned chemicals and throwing things away.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time in practice detoxifying people from all these chemicals. So it's not just what's in the home, but what we throw away and put in our environment is really our body and our environment.
Well, you said there is no way. You can't just, we clean up our house, we put it out on the curb like, oh, I cleaned that.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't. You just moved the garbage from one place to another.
Right.
Same as in our body, in our diet. When we eat something, it doesn't just we don't just eat it, poop out the waste, and it's gone. It has an effect. What we eat becomes part of our DNA, a part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're drinking out of plastic bottles, or the worst, the ones that have been sitting around in our warm car, we're taking in all that crap.
Right.
It's just, it doesn't ever go away.
Right. And just an interesting example, DDT.
Right. Banned in the 70s, and they're still finding it in unborn babies.
So, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And there's one particular picture when I was going through the book that really stood out for me.
I think I know what it is.
It gives me a good feeling when I look at it. And
it's you and me on
no.
Okay.
It's on page 102, and it's the fridge.
It's the fridge. Let me just hold this a little bit closer. Isn't that awesome?
That is awesome.
Everyone's loving this picture and they're Instagramming it because I think the reason is that anyone who wants to eat and live healthfully, which obviously if you're picking up this book is a goal,
right?
You want your fridge to look like that, and ideally you want your fridge to look like that and have someone else do the work. But I mean, if you read the book, I explain how to do it. But I just think it's a great motivation because with a fridge like that, you have to eat well, and thereby you have to feel well and live well, and everything is just awesome and beautiful. But yeah, I like that picture too. That is my fridge at my kitchen where
this is basically your medicine cabinet.
Yeah.
This is your medicine, right? And something I like to tell people is the cook in your family is the doctor. Is the what?
It's the doctor. 1, 2, 3. Doctor.
Doctor of the family, right? Because you've got your whole family's health in your control.
Yeah. An effective doctor. The effective doctor of your family.
I love it.
But yeah, that is a good snap.
Yeah. So.
Now
what's your optimal day?
Oh my gosh. If I didn't have to work, I mean, I love my work, but I could spend the entire day taking care of my health. It feels so good. So an optimal day probably means that I got a good 8 hours of sleep, waking up when it's still quiet, 6:30 in the morning, meditating for 20 minutes, doing some skin brushing, getting into our infrared sauna, maybe doing a bit of yoga before, depending. If I had the whole day, I'd be doing an hour and a half of yoga twice a day. But then, showering, cleansing, all that, making a beautiful juice, having good smoothies, good food, and really just enjoying. So for me, food and nutrition is such an important part, but I'm also super creative. So I love being able to do things hands-on, which is where the recipe creation comes in. I don't love day-to-day cooking. I don't love, making breakfast every day, making dinner every day. I love the creative process. So my dream job, and I would say I'm going to retire in when I'm 35, is to be writing, creating recipes, photographing them, propping them, that kind of thing.
Right.
That's my optimal day, and having the time to fully nourish my body with food, meditating, yoga, movement, fresh air, ideally sunshine, surfing. I could go on.
Wow, there's a lot of things in there.
And spending with you.
Oh, spending, okay. So, these books can be completely overwhelming. How many pages are there?
240 of content, I think.
240?
Yeah, maybe.
That's a lot of stuff. And if someone wants to make this transition, I see there's an 8-week transition. How do you recommend someone uses the book for maximum success? Because I'm guessing that you probably don't want people to just read right through quickly and kind of...
Okay, so I think what people should do is read right through it because it's so darn great. You read through it, cover to cover.
Yeah.
And people are doing that because throughout the book there's anecdotes and stories and it's kind of silly.
Right.
But at the end of each chapter, I do give, starting with chapter 3, I give sort of chapter highlights. And I based a lot of some of the implementation things on some really great books that I found effective. And what I love is at the end of the chapter, kind of like in high school or even in nutrition school, you have those textbooks. So at the chapter end, there's like your glossary of terms and things you need to know.
Right.
So at the end of each chapter, I've got, our mantra, our UnDiet for Abundance mantra. I've got tips for making love in the kitchen, and then transitional strategies.
Right.
And so you can read it chapter at a time, and each week take on a new set of transitions. And that's where the 8-week transition program comes in, which is summarized at the very back with the meal plan.
Right.
But ultimately, that's one approach. Some people are like, all or nothing. I'm going to read this and do everything. The best thing is to figure out what really, really works for you. And the last bit in the chapter is about you're blessed to be stressed. We have such a privilege. If you've bought the book, you have a privilege, because a lot of people don't have that money for a book or for anything. So the fact that we have the privilege to learn about this means that we also have the privilege to choose the foods we want to eat. And again, that's a privilege that should not be taken for granted. So don't get stressed about it. Be blessed that these are the stresses that we have. And then make smarter choices. And, in my creed, which is what opens the book, is the line that every choice counts. And it's so true. So you can read the book and just start making wiser choices. And I'm meeting with people who are interviewing me, and the book is not written for them specifically. The 41-year-old wine sommelier who's going to be reviewing the book, and he said he picked up the copy because his partner had it, and he's like, made me start to think about what I'm putting in my body. And as soon as you start to actually think about it, that's opportunity to start to change it or modify it or transition it or whatever word makes you feel okay and isn't too scary. But you just have to find the way. And what we're also doing is on May 1st, we're going to be doing a book club, an UnDiet book club group, where every week for 5 weeks, we're doubling up the chapters. We're going to be going through it and offering, and I'm going to offer extra tips and help people through whatever challenges they might be having and actually executing it. But ideally, it's really not that hard either.
And you're making it so easy for people.
Well, yeah, it's really not hard. And any excuse you might have, any excuse your clients might have to be like, well, I can't do that, I can't do this, and but this happened and that happened, because that's how they talk. They don't really. The answer is in here. We break down the barriers, so there really is no excuse.
Cool. And something I picked up from one of the things you said is awareness is the gateway to change.
Totally.
So we got to be aware, and then we find the resources in our environment to actually help us with that change.
Yeah, ignorance is not bliss. It's scary and it's dangerous. It's just knowledge is power, and is what you always say in your lectures is knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is really the key. Once you know better, you have the opportunity to do better for yourself, for your family, for your friends. And what's really cool is this never happens in isolation. Like, first what happens, your family, like, they mock you and they're like, oh, you're the healthy one. I would have loved when I was sick to be referred to as the healthy one. They'll mock you, but then what happens is they start to see the benefit on you. And because we're a little bit of a shallow society, they see you're losing weight, your skin's better, your hair's better, your teeth are nicer, all that stuff, and they'll start to ask. And then when they see the glow, because you can be, not your ideal weight yet, but in that transition to health, and your eyes start glowing and your skin starts glowing, and health radiates out of every pore. And I think I mentioned in here in the Au Naturel chapter about natural body care that you could be in a paper bag and eating the best food ever, and you will be the belle of the ball. It's not about the best outfit. It's that health that really truly radiates.
It's an energy.
It's an energy.
And the cool thing is that when it happens to you, and I find this with many of my clients, and even just people who've gone on the health bandwagon, is sometimes it happens slow that you don't notice it in a big way.
What's really amazing is that I'll see people that, took my classes 3, 4, 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago, and then I don't see them for a time, and they'll come into my kitchen, and I was like, you've changed my life, and I didn't. I gave them some tools. They changed their lives, and they are just glowing, beautiful. They're who I call like my UnDiet revolutionaries. They're like the leaders in this effortless lifestyle that just brings on amazing health.
Sounds cool. I love that. So we're just going to finish up here. I don't
want it to end.
It doesn't ever have to end. We can meet again. I know where you
Okay.
live. You know where I live.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to ask you your favorite something. And you're
Oh
just...
God, okay.
Whatever comes to mind. Like the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Okay?
This made me nervous, like a game show.
You got nervous?
A little, I never get
Wow,
nervous.
I know. Favorite dessert?
Oh gosh, those chocolate almond butter cups. The recipes in here.
Those are winners.
Yeah.
Favorite place?
It's a tie now between Hawaii and Costa Rica.
Okay. Favorite activity?
Hanging out with you.
Oh, good answer. Favorite spice?
Probably cinnamon.
I thought you were going to say that. Favorite color?
Pink, but I think it's like pink polka dots with like a white outline on lime green. Is that a color?
Of course it is, Megan. Of course it
You
is.
can't put me in a box.
No, I know. That's why I thought these would be interesting answers. Favorite book?
UnDiet by Meghan Telpner. I might be
Okay,
biased.
second favorite book.
Oh gosh. I don't have an answer.
Okay, I'll let you think
I
about
read-
that one. Our next interview will reveal the answer.
I read a lot of books. I read a lot of non-nutrition fiction
Right.
books. So.
Favorite movie?
I kind of want to say Dirty Dancing, but I feel like that time should have passed. But I don't think it has. There's a Dirty Dancing poster up in my kitchen that I got for my 16th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Favorite drink?
Oh. I don't know. I love a good green juice, and I know that sounds like totally lamanoid, but like, oh, you're a nutritionist.
No, she does.
I
She
do.
loves her green
It makes
juice.
me really happy.
And then favorite companion?
Oh, gee.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't see that one coming.
That would be you.
Aw.
You were my best friend before you even wanted to be my best
So
friend.
true, so true. Well, there you have it. Thank you very much, Meghan Telpner,
Thank you, Mr. Josh Gitalis.
author and nutritionista. If you're watching this before April 2nd, the book has still yet to come out on April 2nd.
You can still get it though, and they're shipping.
If it's afterwards, where can they find you?
They can find on Amazon.com.ca, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, or even better, go to your local bookshop and buy it from your small bricks and mortar bookshop where, you know, support the small businesses in your local area. That'd be my top reco.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again.
What do you want to make for dinner?
I don't know. Let's go see what's in the fridge.
Okay.